Hi everyone, welcome to our Vue.jsTalks number 19. If you're joining live, respect. If you're watching on YouTube, so congratulations, you're experiencing this meetup with BAUS and 2x speed, so true developer superpower. Today's theme is basically how component frameworks evolve and how real teams survive migration. So future plus reality, back to back. Let's do a quick intro and jump straight into the agenda. So very quick, we are Epic Max. We build Vue and Next products for clients and for ourselves. And we spend an unhealthy amount of time caring about things like DX, performance, accessibility, and please don't break production on Friday. We're those kind of people who can't watch loading spinner without thinking, but what's the lighthouse score? That's why we love meetups like this. We learn, share, and steal good ideas from smart people. That's a joke. We also maintain VueStick UI and VueStick admin. If you don't know them, VueStick UI is Vue 3 components library, the usable built-in blocks. VueStick admin is admin template on top, so you can bootstrap dashboard fast without reinventing the sidebar and 30 time. So we build these tools. Basically, we constantly deal with the same questions: how to make UI consistent, how do we keep it accessible, how do we avoid copy pasting components and stuff. So which makes today's second talk especially relevant. Why do we run Vue.jsTalks monthly? Because the front end changes fast and reading change logs alone is depressing. Here we do it better way, real speakers, real stories, real trade-offs, and you can ask questions like, okay, but what breaks? Also, it's a good excuse to meet people who understand sentences like it worked yesterday, but I changed nothing and now it's broken. All right, today's we have two talks and they fit together perfectly. First one, David Pilný, Vue 2 to Vue 3 migration of a large admin panel, a migration story from real life. The goal wasn't to write anything in composition API because that's not the migration, that's a new project with the same deadlines. And a second one is John Leider. Vuetify goes headless. Vuetify is introducing Vuetify v0 framework-agnostic composable layer. Think of it as separating the logic, state, key, port navigation, accessible patterns from the styling, meaning that you can swap design systems without rewriting all behavior. And it's also a big step forward to the Vuetify 5 foundation. I think, I hope I said everything correct about that. So John will correct me if not in the future. So we'll do quick question and answers after each talk. So keep your questions ready. You can put them in the chat. And yeah, let's not spend time anymore. Let's move on to our first speaker, which is David Pilný. David is a member of platform team, managing and setting standards of Vue JavaScript projects. He loves coffee, calisthenics, and learning new technologies. Beside tech, he's quite passionate about languages, history, sociology, and how cultures influence each other. Hi, David. Nice to see you there. And I'm passing mic to you.
Hi, thank you, Paul. I want to ask for the beginning, can you all hear me?
Yep.
And let me share my screen. Just a second. Perfect. Can you see my presentation? Do you see my presentation?
Yeah. It's all good.
Yes, perfect. So, hi, my name is David Pilný. I work as a front-end developer / full-stack-ish developer at Dr. Max, which is one of the largest pharmacy chains in Europe. As Pavel said, I'm a member of the platform team, which is responsible for sort of managing the tech stack and setting the coding standards for the other teams. And today I would like to share with you my experience with migrating large admin panel application from Vue 2 to Vue 3, and also from Vuetify 2 to Vuetify 3. So let me begin by introducing the application so we all understand the scope of this application. So altogether, this application contains almost 800 Vue components. The application builds into 7 different mutations, each for every country Dr. Max operates in. And the application is responsible for managing e-commerce and logistics agendas for Dr. Max business. And it works like that. Every agenda has its own module. And each module is basically registered via app container with a sort of dependency injection patterns. So each country has its own app container, and it builds into a final image. Let me start with why this migration was difficult. So as I said, there was almost 800 components. Basically all the components were using deprecated options API, and all of them were using Vuetify too, with also deprecated APIs. There are 7 different country builds with country-specific overrides. Basically all the modules share some core components, right? For example, we have a dynamic data table component, which is built on top of the Vuetify data table. And basically in those components, when you mess something up, you can notice it in every module, right? So when you mess something in the core dependencies, basically the issues are in the all applications. And also one of the crucial issues was with Vue library with version 3, which is only compatible with Vue 2, right? And this was also this was a big issue because we have our own form frame components and form group components, which basically auto-register the value from child inputs based on their name, right? So these components are responsible for input validations, and they, out of the box, create this form data object, right? So reactive object. So you don't have to manually bind the values to Vue models, which I think you are all familiar with, because it's sort of pain in the ass to do that. And there is like the Vue version 4 has a completely different API, so we actually sort of have to leave it from the update. And in a couple of minutes, I'm gonna tell you how we went around it. So what is our migration strategy? When we were discussing the migration changes, our approach or our mindset was that if we do something, we should do it properly, right? So when we do that, we should rewrite everything to the composition API, to the newest pattern, to switch from Vuex store to Pilný, and so on and so on. Which with that approach, there was a huge obstacle, which is that the feature teams and the business want to develop their agendas. So if we wanted to make our lives easier, we would do a code freeze for a couple of months to focus on everything in peace. But that would mean that the feature teams and the business would eat us, because they would be basically blocked for a couple of months or half a year, I don't know. So another option was no code freeze, but basically it would work like that we would migrate in our branch, which we would have to periodically rebase on the current master, where would be, for example, new modules still written in the old pattern, or there would be changes in the modules which we already migrated, and there would be a conflict during the rebase, and we would basically rewrite the new logic we were not familiar with to the new API, like on the go. So after extensive discussions, a colleague of mine had this idea that the migration doesn't have to equal like a complete migration. What we can do is we can like have an working application with Vue 3 and Vuetify 3 but with leaving the old patterns, right? So we would leave the Vuex store, we would leave the options API, and after we would do this, which this approach we call one-shot. After we do this one-shot, we can focus on gradual migration and switching to composition API, rewriting mixins, the composables, and so on. So we decided to give it a try, and the first step was that we found an ESLint plugin Vuetify, which was the rule that flagged some of the most crucial changes and actually fixed these in the code, like automatically. Basically, this lint was responsible for approximately 60% of changes in the template, right? Now, after we done this, we could run in quotes the application, but when we open it in the browser, the screen would be white and there was a ton of errors, right? So we spent next 2 weeks, it's just one sprint in the Agile, at least at our company, to actually fix these errors. And after these 2 weeks, we had functional, again in quotes, functional application, which it will actually show the content, but the layout was completely broken and basically none of the forms or many buttons worked. So we spent another week or two fixing these issues. So we would make at least the forms sort of functional, meaning that it would register the values from the inputs. And basically, we fixed the obvious issues, right? But that was only the first step. But some of the another issues were not so obvious, or the layout changes were not, or design changes were not so obvious. So our next step was that we created a Google form where everybody in the company could submit the changes, the differences they noticed between the old applications and the current ones, or when something is not working, for example, some emits don't bubble to the parent components, basically everything, either broken API or design changes, everything could a person submit into the Google form, and the data from the form would be shown in a Google Sheet table, where we would keep track of what is already fixed, what needs to be fixed, or what is work in progress, and who is working on that. So there are some statistics for you. During the whole migration, we touched 896 files, out of which 782 were Vue files, 83 of them were TypeScript files, and altogether we added 17,692 lines and removed 14,760 lines. Altogether, in our one-shot branch, there was 222 commits. 78 of them were feature commits, which was directly related to our migration work, and 151 were fixed commits, which were reported in the Google form by testers, by users, and for QA. This was deployed. This migration work was deployed in its integration environment, and every day we would release a new version with fixed bugs, and we would iterate over it over and over again. And there are some crucial patterns replaced during the migration. So there are some strategic decisions about not to migrate. No composition API. basically all the components stayed in options API. We just wrapped it in defined components for type safety. And we only had like one script setup tag in the entire kind of changes. There was for now no Pilný migration. We stayed on Vuex 4. And we did not have to actually switch to Vue 4 because we found some obscure project which has like 50 downloads a week. Some guy actually created like the Vue version, which has the same API as V3 as Vue 3. It is just compatible with Vue 3. There was some danger that a guy it has like really low amount of downloads, and we were afraid that he would actually delete it, and we would be absolutely screwed if he or she did so. So we forked this project into our own package in our Dr. Max Azure, and we left the I18 and mode on legacy mode, right? What were the clever workarounds? So actually, the Vuetify 3 API or grid logic differs quite a lot. So we created a file where we sort of overrode the Vuetify 3 grid. I have to say that we already got rid of this abomination, but as a quick fix, it worked well. As I said, we created the custom vvalidate package, and we got rid of the proxy-based reactivity. It became a direct assignment, right? Yeah, one core breaking change was that in Vuetify 2, the singleton instance of the view was mutated directly. Here in Vue 3, the patterns changed, and it basically had dependency injection via app use. And that was one of the breaking changes. And here are some 5 mechanical patterns that we touched in 100 files across the code base. So we got rid of the listeners, which was on 73 places. We removed the sync pattern and replace it with a Vue 3 compatible Vue model. In over 1,000 lines on our inputs, we replaced the value prop with a model value. The scope slots basically are merged in, basically everything is in slots. And newly there need to be emits declarations, right? Also, a lot of changes were in Vuetify 3. Not only the props themselves, but also like the API or some variables provided by vslots were completely changed, or for example, some booleans changed to functions and etc. So, and those were the changes that were not so obvious. For example, those changes were only like noticeable after you clicked a button, for example, deep into some agenda. So the testing was quite difficult in the sense that users would have to click, or testers would have to click through everything inside the app and report the changes. And if something didn't work, we would have to dig through the documentation, because some changes between Vuetify 2 and Vuetify 3 were actually quite significant. What is actually quite funny to me that when in Vuetify 2, when data table provided an item, the value was directly in the item, right? In Vuetify 3, there is this like a layer and the additional layer, and the value is in item.raw. But recently we migrated already to Vuetify 4, and they actually switched back to just item, right? So they removed the raw part. So we have to like rewrite it again in hundreds of files. So thank you. And yeah, this is also related to the change of the props. For example, the headers in the Vuetify table, the old pattern was like the text and the value, like the text was the title of the column, but here it was title and the key. Those are basically the simple changes. It was just like a find it full text and replace it by regex. So those were not so annoying changes. And also there were some third-party library swaps. So here you have overview of which libraries were replaced by which. And this is actually a key tip. Do your audit your dependency tree early, because some Vue 2 libraries are abandoned, or even in case of a library, I think it was a quill-based editor, the developer or the author of the library, like sadly passed away. So we had to find a replacement. Like there were no new changes for 3 years, and the project is completely abandoned. So there is like an overview of the whole migration process. It started in early November, and we finished like right after the Christmas. And in the first day in January, we deployed the migrated version to productions. And here you can see like the top section with the most bugs. I think it was just just for fun and fun. And key lessons I would like to share with you as the scope ruthlessly, because when migrating, you don't have to rewrite everything all at once. I think that the perfection is the enemy of success in such cases. A lot of changes were directly caused by Vuetify. As I said, our components are basically a layer on top of Vuetify components. So if when the Vuetify API changed, many things broke in our own components. Right? Some compatibility shims are valid. For example, the legacy grid. As I said, we already got rid of it. We already removed the legacy mode from the localization library. Basically, I think the main thing is to ship first, and then you have much more time to clean it up. Automate the mechanical, right? You can either do it via full text replacement or use an AI. AI is actually quite powerful for these changes. And yeah, I don't know whether doing this as in a single pull request is the best idea, but it was actually the preferred options for one. I think that too much bureaucracy in such tasks actually complicate and slow down things significantly. And one last thing I want to share, that once we finish this one-shot migration, we actually continued to migrate. For example, the modules which are directly developed by the platform team were already migrated to Pilný and Composition API, and we created basically context for AI for how to do it in other modules. All right, we basically create a guide for other teams so they can switch themselves in their modules, and which also saved us a ton of work. And for example, here's a new version of Vuetify, Vuetify 4, and I have to compliment them, and they have a really good MCP server. So when I was migrating this project like 2 weeks ago from Vuetify 3 to Vuetify 4, I was actually able to do it myself because of the MCP server. Like the Claude code was able to like basically do most of the work in the project. It's true that I burned a ton of tokens on that, but it was really powerful. And like the next week, I only spent by fixing some minor design issues. Right, there was no like breaking of some API. Right, so yeah, if you are migrating to Vuetify 4, I really recommend using Claude. Oh yeah, I think that is all from my side. And it's time for questions. Do you have any questions? Yeah, John?
I'm here.
I thought you were raising your hands, or I don't know what that is.
Oh no, I was just clapping. No, it's great to see. Version 3 we learned a lot, and with version 4 our big goal was to try to make it not that again. So I'm glad to hear that experience was good.
Yeah, it was from Vuetify 3 to Vuetify 4. It was a really smooth experience. From Vuetify 2 to Vuetify 3, it was hell.
I see that we have one question in the chat. Sorry, John. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask because I didn't see you touch on it. Did you utilize the ESLint plugin for Vuetify during your upgrade from version 3?
Yes, it was in the beginning. Like I was saying,
okay.
Yeah, that was the first change. It like helped a lot. As I said, it did 60% of the changes in the templates, but still it was broken. It saved a lot of work, but there were still a lot of manual work. But it helped tremendously.
Understood.
Yeah, thanks. I see that we have 2 questions in the chat. One from Jacek. Was there a Next in the stack? I may have missed that.
No, since this is the internal application, it's a single-page application, so there's no Next. But actually, Dr. Max uses a Next for their eShop. And to be honest, the project is a complete mess because when the project was started, there was basically none of the current Next modules. So basically what now currently exists in the Next 4, it was non-existent in the Next 2, and the teams, the developers in Dr. Max were basically creating what now exists in the ecosystems. And now during the migration, it causes a lot of like pain. It's we are migrating. We've been migrating for like half a year already, and we finally see the light in the end of the tunnel, but still a lot of work.
Cool. Yeah, considering that that you said you have multiple regions-based components or even sub-projects, right? In this project, using Next with the layers feature can be beneficial. Just talking out loud. So
yeah, we were actually thinking about it when we want to basically give the full responsibility to future teams. So we were actually thinking about switching to Next. But yeah, it brings some specific pain points.
Absolutely. There is no magic wand that will make everything simple and efficient. Yeah, another question we have in the chat: what parts of migration fit best for AI automation?
I think well, you have different angles from which you can take this. One thing is that if there is some repetitive pattern, this is something that AI works best with. Or when I was migrating modules from Vuex to Pilný, I was actually first doing migrating a single module where I basically tried a concept. I created basically a proof of concept. I was doing everything with AI, so it can actually learn on this. When it messed up, I corrected it and let it save to a markdown file where we actually kept like the context for the migration, and then I let it like migrate bigger and bigger modules. And when I found something that I didn't like, I told it specifically how to correct it. And basically, when I use this context for migrating other modules, it made less and less errors. And after migrating, like, for example, last 5 modules, it did it autonomously, right? There was basically no need for intervention. So to answer your question, I think you can use everything for AI, but don't expect magic if you just tell it, migrate this to composition API or Pilný. Let it first analyze the dependencies or make sense, and let it just iterate on its analysis, right? Create a small proof of concept, then iterate on that, etc., etc.
Yep, absolutely agree with that. The more docs you have, the more the better result you will achieve, but the more tokens you will spend on that.
Yeah.
All right. One last question we have in the chat. MCP for migration is great, but if there isn't the official one available, I clone both current version and new version locally. Then tells Claude, this is the current code. That is the new one. Find changes and migrate.
I'm sorry, I don't really understand what exactly the question is. There is an official one. Well, oh, okay.
Oh, that was not the question, so that's my mistake.
But actually, there is official MCP for Vuetify 4. If I'm not mistaken, I used it.
All right. So considering there is no more questions, I think we can move on. Thanks again, David. That was actually not really long migration in 2 months. We had much longer right on the previous call where there was a story about GitLab migration for a few years. So congratulations with your migration and thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, let's move on. Our next speaker is John Leider. He's creator of and lead maintainer of Vuetify, built an open source for over a decade and currently focused on making a headless UI the default foundation for the Vue ecosystem. Hi, John. Nice to see you again there.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, so I'm stopping my presentation. I'm asking David to stop yours as well. Thank you. And yeah, I'm passing the mic to you, John.
All righty. You able to see this?
Yeah, but it's like
Stretched?
yeah, stretched.
Okay, hold on. Future resolution. Is that better?
No, I think it's the same. Oh, at least for me.
Let me stop sharing and try resharing again.
No.
Is that working?
It's still like that, like I'm looking on the phone.
Oh my goodness. Display settings. Let me look at the settings, I guess. Is this just you or are other people having this issue as well?
Yeah, probably same for everyone.
I don't know how to make it not. Let me see. I mean, is this stretched wide too? Are you not able to see this?
That's one looking okay.
Interesting. All right, I'll just start from here to just get things moving. I don't understand why it's doing that. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is John Leider. I am creator of Vuetify, and today I want to talk a little bit about what I've been working on for past year. Vuetify 0. There's been a lot of feedback over the years. Initially when the framework was created, Vuetify framework was created, we utilized material design for our foundational design system. And over the years, it has, become kind of a sore point that it's not easy to change out styling, to change out configuration. And so today I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing to solve that. So all of the patterns and all of the principles that we used in Vuetify since actually the beginning have been essentially distilled down into reusable composables that will be publicly available for people to use. There's actually 3 layers to this. The idea is Vuetify 0 will be the first dependency, runtime dependency that Vuetify has ever had. And the reason why is because we are splitting up the responsibilities to different repositories, to different projects, where Vuetify kind of sits on top. And I'll talk a little bit about what that looks like here in a second. But everything in Vuetify 0 has been created to be not only AI native and headless first, but we also are going to be offering not just the headless components, but we're also providing the underlying composables as publicly available functionality that you can conditionally use in your application or not use. But the idea is we're giving all the tools available needed to make a UI framework, to just create a single project, to make a small reusable framework within your organization, and that it's easy to configure and fits into a modern stack and is really only opinionated on logic as opposed to styling. So Vuetify 0 is completely styleless. In fact, if you want to take a look at the documentation while I'm talking, you can see a little bit about how that website is styled, and that is actually being styled with Vuetify 0 and Tailwind CSS preset 4, for Uno CSS. And that's how the foundation of Vuetify 0 has basically been set up, that it has no inference as to what the feature is styled like, only the underlying functionality that powers it. And this kind of starts with a 3-part process where we make it easy to take reusable singleton contexts and making them easily available in a Vue application so that you can create plugins very easily that just hook up and work. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that is. So when I was talking about the different layers, the tooling that is being put in, that is in Vuetify 0, is in a lot of ways stuff that we have taken from the Vuetify framework, along with new development, and kind of refined down to accomplish its goal, but provide the tooling that we need to accomplish a lot of things in Vuetify, trying to reduce its scope of responsibility. And on the pathway to unstyled, to where users can take a piece of functionality that is truly primitive and unstyled, headless, and easily swap in design systems, has been something that we've always wanted to be able to do with Vuetify. That is what we will be able to do in Vuetify 0. So we have the utilities layer, we have the composables layer. This is the underlying functionality that powers our different headless composables that we're creating. And about 90% of everything created in Vuetify 0 specifically has been to meet feature parity with what is available in Vuetify 4. So what that means is everything that we support in Vuetify 4 as of right now can be distilled down to functionality that exists already in Vuetify 0, allowing us to have a very clear path as we work on upgrading the next version of Vuetify later this year. So one of the other cool things that we have is our plugin system. Now, one of the things that Vuetify has had since the beginning is kind of the concept of this framework core, where it has, localization, it has icons, it has breakpoints, it has theming, it has all these different aspects of your application that you would configure, that when you loaded up your Vuetify application, these top level settings would affect components and functionality downstream. So what I've done is taken that same logic and that same process that we have in Vuetify and distilled that down into a set of reusable plugins. And the cool thing about these plugins are the way that they're all designed is to have very lightweight fallbacks. So what does that mean? Let's say that you want to create a pagination component for a project. You just want to use the pagination component. So you import it, and then that pagination component has some ARIA information that's already set up and available that you can also modify at runtime. But let's say later on you get a requirement and you're like, hey, we're actually going to have to support multiple languages now. So all you have to do on the Vuetify 0 end is bring in the locale plugin, and then you can dynamically, create your message set for the localizations that you need to support, similar to like you would do in Vuetify, except the component now comes online with access to that localization your pagination component does. So just by simply installing an extra plugin optionally, you enable new functionality in existing features that you've already implemented. And this is true throughout all of the framework. So let's look at a couple examples here. Use rules and use locale. So use rules is a component that's right now in Vuetify labs. However, it has been determined that it should be at the Vuetify 0 level. So recently it's been moved down. So how does this interact? All right, so we have validation in Vuetify. If you've used it before, you'll know that you can provide a function that returns either true or string. And the thought process behind this, since for the beginning, is either it's valid or we have an error. Whether or not you want to display that error is up to them, but we either have true or an error. So use rules was an attempt to make certain things like you have rules that for your validation that you reuse constantly throughout your application. So to make it easier to offer that, you can define this at your application's plugin level, and then it just propagates down. You have access to it to use it anywhere. But then if you decide to, okay, again, I need to add localization. I need to support 3 or 4 different languages. So now you want to add use locale. Well, the cool thing about that is now, if you've added that in your application, all you have to do is, using a special key, define what you want your rules to be in different languages. And now, just because that locale plugin has been instantiated, now the rules plugin automatically uses that functionality, so that before, when you just needed to support English, and now you need to support 2 different languages, it's as simple as instantiating a new plugin, defining your localizations, and overriding the rule patterns that you create. Because at a basic level, none of these plugins, it's not completely true, but most of them, but none of these plugins really provide defaults. You will be bringing that. So things like theme, which is not on this page, but theme, we don't ship with any colors. The colors are all defined by the user based on whatever your naming conventions are and whatever your design system colors are. But we have added things to make it better. But let's go back. Looking at use date and use locale. We actually do this in Vuetify. We actually sync these 2 together. Whenever you change a language in localization, we actually modify and update information locally for the date composable, and then it changes how it reacts. Same thing in Vuetify 0. So you start out using localization. Now you can plug in use date, and now you can, or excuse me, reverse that. You're using use date, need to support localization. Now you can support multiple languages and multiple types of date display with easy, just installing a new plugin. And then lastly, just wanted to kind of highlight here the create registry and use logger. So like I said before, all plugins have a very lightweight fallback function. And what this does is it allows for other features that utilize them to have a fallback in case the user isn't actually instantiating and creating the plugin associated with that. But this allows that the system continues to work as normal. Tree shaking still picks it up properly, so we still get a reduced bundle size, but then our application continues to work as normal. And as your project, your requirements, whatever grows, you can conditionally add more on as you need. And I'll talk a little bit about why that's cool in just a second. But we have some console logging that's done inside of composables to convey information to the user. But if you want to, you can use the create logger plugin and use your own. You can use Consola or Pilný, and then be able to have customized enhanced logging that can provide additional information and easier to visually disseminate the information on the screen by just putting in a plugin. And again, everything that uses that will automatically come online, and instead of using a regular console log, we'll run it through the logger of your choice. So another cool part about our plugins, and this is applicable to not only plugins, but also some other composables that we want to offer multiple types of user adapter interfaces for, mainly create data table. But let's go right into the top use features. So the way that all of our plugin composables are designed is the same concept that we used in Vuetify, where we provide localization, right? We have all of the functionality, the minimum functionality needed to power the Vuetify framework as our default adapter. But if you want to use Vue 18 in, you can just plug it in and it will just work. So I loved that process. I loved being able to provide a feature with baseline functionality that accomplished 90–95% of all of the things the user's going to need to get done with that particular feature. And then they can, if they need to, swap to a different adapter. Same thing with use date in Vuetify, right? You've got our basic dates, then you've got Luxin, you've got Moment, you've got date FNs. So we're bringing that same logic to the plugin system. So for example, all of these things that you're seeing right here are features that either exist in Vuetify at some level or features that we implement in our Vuetify ecosystem at some level. So all of these features were created with a purpose of not only are we consuming this, but we're making it so that if somebody wants to also use this feature to accomplish the same goal, they can use whatever they want. For example, launch darkly or post hog, flagsmith. You can define what service you're using. The same thing applies to, things like I said, localization, storage, create data table. If you've worked with the data table in version 3 or version 4 now, in version 2, we had a single data table that accounted for all 3 scenarios of I have a client-side table, I have a server table, and I have a virtual table. So we combine that same logic with adapter and to create data tables. So now we have these adapters that allow you to easily take a composable, which right now we just have the composable, but we will have the actual data table headless components. But the point being is that you have the flexibility to take our underlying functionality that we have tried to hone in and perfect over the past decade, and then use just the functionality in whatever way that you feel that is necessary. If you want to use composables, you can use composables. If you want to use components, you can use components, but that's completely up to you. So another thing that is a first class concern in Vuetify 0 and something that has over the years in different ways plagued Vuetify was some performance concerns in some scenarios, especially related to, tree view. So one of the things that I set out to do whenever I first started building Vuetify 0 was that I wanted the performance of the components to matter. I wanted to track it, and I wanted to some way be able to hold accountability to make sure that when we ship something, that it is meeting the expectation in performance. And it also gives an opportunity for us to identify if things aren't as fast as they should be, or identify areas that we need to improve on, and also informs the user if they particularly wanted to help as well, what they could do to help, or what scenarios that they particularly might use that feature in, such as saving large data sets, being able to reference and find information in large data sets by like an ID or by an index, stuff like that. And we break up those benchmark calculations into either O1, ON, or ON2. And again, this is to try to show on a scale as best as we possibly can a range of functionality that this feature is expected to be used for and how it performs in scenarios. And then again, so that we can track this historically. So another feature that was a lot of fun to work on and kind of was my entryway into Claude code consuming me was when I was on the Claude documentation. I really liked how they had this little input at the bottom of the screen. It's like, ask the question to the documentation. And I was like, oh, that's awesome, right? Because you can, LLM's just working on text, so you can easily respond to most user questions, right? And I was like, I totally want to do that for Vuetify 0. And that's what we've done. So now within the documentation, and this will be advanced and improved over time. It's just a baseline implementation. So right now it only has a memory of about 6 messages in terms of your conversation with them, but it has access to all of the documentation in Vuetify 0 and allows you to ask questions about things, have charts generated, have code generated that you can literally have generated by the AI and then click to open it up in the Vuetify playground, or to save your entire AI conversation into a Vuetify bin, or just copy and paste, or, there's a lot you can do with it, but I thought it would be really awesome to be able to, make a better experience for the users if they have questions that they just don't even know how to ask. Sometimes even we have added these little call outs inside the documentation that has like a question in it that says, like, what would I do in this scenario? And the user can click it. It automatically goes up, pings the AI, gives the user a response, and helps engage them a little bit so that they can learn and better understand the software that they're working with. So another part of that AI native approach, as was discussed earlier, is the Vuetify MCP server. Now, there's a lot I still want to do with it. It's definitely good, But I have been working on some stuff locally that I'm wanting to get onto it that is going to make it great. But the big thing that the MCP is meant to do is to help bridge the gap between the knowledge of the LLM that you're using, or whichever application you're using, or model you're using, with the most up-to-date information that we have for the framework, as well as some other information that the agent could use to interact and work with your application. So we have this for Vuetify, but we also have it for Vuetify 0. Same MCP server. You don't even have to add anything new. And again, right now it just has some baseline stuff to get you going, to make itself useful to the agent. We'll be adding some additional improvements. But this is again one of the big commitments that we kind of have with Vuetify 0 going forward is an AI first approach, and a way that is easy for LLMs to use the software, to use the code, but also easy for developers to learn about the concepts that are being used in Vuetify 0, as well as how the agent is implementing them. So I personally use Claude Code every single day, and everyone kind of has different experiences with this, but for me, I've learned that configuration is king, and if you can, if you have the right configuration set up, you can get a lot done with Claude Code. All right, so moving on to the next thing. One of the cool parts about Vuetify 0 is I'm trying to release it with all of the stuff available in the Vuetify ecosystem out the gate. So I've already showed that we have the Vuetify MCP that's already set up and supports Vuetify 0. I don't have a slide for it, but play.vuetify.js.com. This is an interactive playground that are examples from Vuetify documentation to open it up in. It now has support to create Vuetify 0 templates. But on top of that, we are rewriting the playground, and now we have a v0play.vuetify.js.com where you can interact. It is a playground that is built with Vuetify 0 from the ground up to be able to make it easy to interact and use it in the browser. All right, so now we also have Vuetify CLI. Now, what this does, at least for Vuetify 0 particularly, right, we have, you can see we can add ESLint, we can add MCP, we can create into Vuetify projects, stuff you would expect. And I don't even know why it's not in here. It's supposed to be in here. So there's a command called Vuetify Analyze. Not sure why I didn't get that in here. And this is really awesome. So imagine you start a new project for a company, and you've got 3 or 4 different kind of multi-tenant styles that you need to have for an application, and you end up needing to have 4 different design systems. Okay, so you've got these 4 different design systems. You've created them with Vuetify 0. They all look different. They all have different styling. They implement functionality a little bit different, and you're bouncing between these projects, and you need to understand, you're like, how, what is in this project? How can I interact? What can I do? Well, we've added a command to the CLI called Vuetify Analyze, and this actually also works in Vuetify, where it will give you an output of everything that you're using in your application for Vuetify. But Vuetify 0 goes one step further, and we give, it's right here. It just should say Vuetify Analyze. And what this does is it gives you a customized link that you can open up that goes to the Vuetify 0 documentation, and will filter out all of the content that is in the documentation to only show functionality and features that are present in your project. Now, right now, this is a manual thing. We have a lot of really cool ideas in the future for making it automated, but the idea is, because Vuetify 0 is the foundation, and you can build projects with it, you can use tiny pieces of functionality, filtering or grouping, or just one single component, or you can build reusable UI design systems that are only providing, at least from our end, is the explicit functionality to make that feature accomplish what we've determined its goal should be. But now we're going to be trying to make it easier to customize your experience when you're working with Vuetify 0. Most people that are spending a lot of time with agentic coding agents, we're not getting as much documentation that people are going into that they're spending and learning because it's not as relevant for some people in some cases. So what I'm trying to do is improve the overall experience and to provide value that can be useful for the developer outside of them working with a coding agent, that they can have the ability to, okay, here's a specific documentation that is tied only to this design system. And then when the design system changes, the documentation can change too. All right, so timeline. All right, we got 2 slides left. So obviously we are in a big AI push. It's a bubble of some sort, but it is a good time to be a developer if you know what you want to do. And Vuetify 0 has kind of, while I have been working on it and set up the foundation well before Claude Code was released and well before I used it, it has drastically changed what we're going to be able to offer from Vuetify due to just the massive increase to productivity that it provides. All right, so what does this look like for Vuetify 0? Well, we've already shipped 0.10, which was our first kind of public pre-alpha release to get it out there, make sure that we could pull it into projects, testing out some kinks, right? And then we tested out after release Vuetify 4, we did a integration on the next branch of Vuetify for Vuetify 5, implementing the underlying resize composables that Vuetify 0 provides, that Vuetify also provides, replaced them. So we've actually already completed our first merger into the framework using Vuetify 0. We will more than likely be launching an alpha later this year for Vuetify 5. And so here's what's coming up next. We've got the end of this month, I'll be releasing version 0.20 pre-alpha to get last few features in before we go into official version 1 alpha for Vuetify 0. We're going to take the next few months after that to collect all feedback, to make changes that we need to make in order to integrate with to Vuetify. But the cool part is that since all of this functionality is distilled from Vuetify and the patterns are the same, everything is hooking up pretty well. In fact, really only some minor type issues, nothing breaking for the user. And if that's something you've had on your mind at all during this conversation, let me assure you that I'm about 99% confident that the stuff that we're doing in Vuetify 0 will affect upstream Vuetify users absolutely zero in their application. Only will they gain functionality or performance. Nothing will leave, okay? So once we get the version 1 final out towards the end of June, now we will have already been integrating Vuetify 0 into Vuetify 5 for release. So Vuetify 5, we were looking at also coming out this year, right? Using Vuetify 0 as a base for most functionality that we can. I'm sure there'll be some lessons learned along the way. But this is why we are also providing, now I'm going to skip Vuetify paper for just 1 second, and I'm going to talk about the maturity matrix. This is something that was given to me as an idea by one of our core team members, and I absolutely love it. And what the idea is that we have, again, most of the functionality in Vuetify 0 is simply derived from what we did in Vuetify. It's just done better, made cleaner, and it doesn't use, I didn't talk about this before, but it doesn't use TSX. Okay, it uses straight Vue SFCs and Vue macros. So like anybody can jump in. The literal way that the components and functionality looks like in Vuetify 0 is like you're looking at the Vue documentation. So it's absolutely true to the most available functionality that's in Vue. And what the maturity matrix is meant to provide is users with an idea of where a piece of functionality is at in its chain of testing, right? From we're just now drafting this functionality to we're now previewing it so you can use it in the release to we have included it in a release of Vuetify, we've integrated it into Vuetify and it works. And then mature is we've released the feature in Vuetify. So this will provide a ongoing, up-to-date kind of view of all of the individual features that are in Vuetify 0 and where their state is in their development cycle. So now that takes us to Vuetify Paper. Now, Vuetify Paper is the visual aspect of Vuetify. Now, I'm not going to be talking a whole lot about that right now because it is later this year, but the idea is that the strength that made Vuetify powerful early on, I believe, has over time, especially leading into this modern development era, has kind of made it one of its greatest detriments. Okay, so early on, whenever we were supporting Material 1, and then we moved to Material Design 2, and then eventually some updates from Material Design 3, along the way, we ended up having to support kind of haphazardly 3 separate design systems in one way, shape, or form, because not all components that existed in one design system for Material always made it to the next. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. And then this ability to have such a large API footprint, while very powerful early on, and especially if you're wanting to use the Material theme, but whenever it comes to a lot of the modern tech stacks now, we're getting even more modular and we're getting even more intricate with the functionality and how we provide it. It just kind of gets in the way of the user. So what Vuetify Paper is going to stand in to do is take Vuetify 0 under the hood and create a design system. Okay, what is a design system? Okay, well, a design system is a collection of components and features that is based off of a given design. And not all design systems have the same components, and not all design systems have the same features. But because of the way Vuetify 0 is developed, when we do provide these, and I'm calling them paper design systems, any functionality that you may want that doesn't exist in it, you would just bring in yourself. What does that mean? Okay. So if we look at the Vuetify text field, if you've ever used it or any one of our inputs, you know that you can assign a variant, outlined, elevated, tonal. It's a couple different things for different components. And what this allowed the user to do is have the flexibility to configure that particular component to look a certain way. Okay, but now when we're in Material Design 2 and Design 3, and we have 7 variants of an input, especially an initial version still based off of Material Design 1, which certainly has implications for how we implement the component, it just becomes too much. It becomes one thing trying to do too many things, and then it's not doing good at anything at all. So where Vuetify Paper stands is it will implement design systems. So starting out, what does that mean? Material Design 3, which I think they're just calling Material now, that will be one of our design systems available. And it will include only features and functionality that exists in the Material Design 3 spec using Vuetify 0 under the hood. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the, I'm probably going to do Uno CSS. I think it's the most powerful. But what this does is now we're only going to be offering what is available in a design system. And because of the flexibility underneath of Vuetify 0 headless components, the user can change, will be able to change these and modify them any way that they want. They can change in and out designs. The design systems are based upon the components. And not all, like I said, not all design systems have the same components. So we might have a design system that doesn't have a calendar, but we will have a design system that does have a calendar, and we'll have a Vuetify 0 headless calendar component. But the way that they'll be implemented will be on a design per design basis. Excuse me. And yeah, so that's going to go ahead and wrap up what I'm talking about. I'm really excited to have people start playing around with this. I think that it's going to be extremely powerful for building design systems that are flexible and can easily change. I know there was a lot of there's a lot of heartache during Vuetify's growth over the years, where we've definitely fallen on some regards, but we're really trying to, example version 4 with our upgrade process, and version 5 and go in the future. We're trying to heavily analyze all of the decisions that we're making to ensure that the process for upgrading versions is as simple as possible. And with introducing Vuetify 0 and Vuetify Paper, we're now opening 2 new areas that people can enter the Vuetify ecosystem and take advantage of all of the things that we have available, because some people need different things. Yeah, so we're working on that this year. The team is heads down. Everyone's got Claude Code subscriptions. We've got a Vuetify team going right now, and we're making really good progress, and we're really excited to get this functionality out into y'all's hands. And yeah, that's all I've got for today.
Thanks, John. Like always, amazing info, and I'm glad to see that Vuetify is really running on the edge of technologies all the time. That's really cool. So yeah, guys, do you have any questions to John? I know that everybody is waiting for the release, right?
I think most of the people in here are Vuetify core team members anyways, at least a lot of them are. So they're coming in here to get their little education score. But yeah, if there's any questions, feel free to ask. If not, feel free to hop on the Vuetify Discord and, ping one of the core team members. We're always on.
Sure. One question, maybe I already asked that on the previous sessions, not sure. Is there any background for the logo of Vuetify 0? Is that the circle representing the 0 or something else, or it's just abstract?
It's actually, well, yeah, to me, it's meant to represent 0, but also the shape of a circle. And it kind of meant to be like represent a primitive shape and kind of the baseline. But yeah, it represents both a 0 and a circle to me.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I don't see any questions in the chat, so I just want to say thank you, John. Always nice to see you there. Always nice to hear your any of your topics, not only Vuetify, but any info is always cool to be there. Yeah, thanks. So I think we are done for today. Just a small surprise at the end. There was an announce of Vue Plus Alpha recently, and it's worth to read that. I'm just posting the Void Zero article for everybody, so you can navigate and check it out by yourself. I would say that the new era is coming, and the builders will be faster, and performance will be even faster than we have it right now. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining our meetups number 19. Thanks for our speakers. Beautiful topics as always, and see you guys in the next month and the next number 20. Bye-bye.